Good evening, everyone. It's Monday, August 14th, 2023. It's time for the regularly scheduled city council meeting. As the clerk certify the meeting notice.
This meeting has been noticed in accordance with Idaho Code 74-204.
Clerk call the roll.
Councilmember Heller,
Present.
Councilmember Jacobs.
Here.
Councilmember Jorgensen. Here. Councilmember Page.
Here.
Thank you. If you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Council, under changes to the agenda, I want to add an executive session so I can brief you on where we stand with the police chief interviews.
Mr. Mayor, is there the basis for adding it to the agenda?
It's time sensitive, so we can move the process along.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
We were able to complete our interviews. Well, they'll be completed by tomorrow.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
do you need a motion to modify the agenda to
Yeah.
the executive session? I so moved.
okay. Second. Got a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. The agenda is amended. Next item is consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
I move to approve the consent agenda as written.
I would second.
got a motion and second to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Move down to special business. I have a proclamation for our Elevate Our Everyday Heroes. Whereas we recognize our law enforcement officers, firefighters, EMS, dispatchers, corrections, coroners, chaplains, retired first responders, healthcare workers, clinicians, our military, our veterans, and their families as everyday heroes. And whereas these heroes put themselves in harm's way, protecting and serving our communities without hesitation, and their selfless work can take a great toll on their physical and mental health. And whereas we recognize it is paramount for us as a community to surround our first responders, military members, our veterans, and their families with love, respect, and the best resources available for them to maintain their mental health, wellness, and build resiliency. And whereas it has been shown that improving access to good mental health and wellness resources substantially affects their families' well-being, as well as the communities in which they serve. And whereas we honor and pay tribute to those who have been lost in the line of duty or died by suicide, as well as those who continue to keep the spirit of true heroism alive each day by serving as our everyday heroes. Now, therefore, I, John G. Evans, Mayor of the City of Garden City, do hereby proclaim September 11, 2023 to be Elevate Our Everyday Heroes Day, dated this 14th day of August, 2023. I'm going to come around front and we'll get a picture. Thank you. Thank you. Special business F2 is request for reconsideration of final written decision of SAP FY 2023-0001. Mr. Wadhams, would you lead us through the protocol, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I think that tonight we should first hear from Dave Leroy. He's the attorney that represents the parties that are asking for reconsideration. And then at that point in time, I can give a staff report, or if you prefer, I'd be happy to give the staff report first. But I think we hear from Dave Leroy first, and I'm happy to give my staff report. And when I do that, an hour later, I'm going to reference page 68 in your staff packet. That is my legal memorandum on this. And I think depending on what the council wants to do, there's some wording of some potential motions on page 68 of the council packet that I would recommend.
Hey, thank you. Mr. Leroy. Welcome, Mr. Leroy.
Mr. Mayor, members of council. I appreciate the chance to come back before you with regard to simply the text of the decision that you reached. And I think the materials in writing which we supplied to you are fairly self-explanatory. My clients were greatly comforted and expressed that comfort by the directions that you gave and the articulation that you made, both in your give and take of considering the motion and your material specifics of the motion. But the written decision, we believe, did not entirely reflect the accuracy and contain the necessary language to make sure that going forward for the next decade, we're not back arguing about some nuance that wasn't intended by you, by us, by the developer. So it's very essential, we believe, that your written decision precisely reflect that, what you ordered to be done in two areas, most specifically, the connection to North Fair Oaks. And secondly, of course, the issue about the 35-foot height restriction in an area east of the magic red line that was in that exhibit. It's Exhibit A that simply was referred to and adopted by the council that evening. As to those two issues, the 35-foot issue, for instance, should be addressed by the council because in the primary decision point, you simply said shall be no higher than 35, but the word feet or a foot sign was not mentioned there. But I think it's important that we all fully contemplate what 35 feet we're talking about. There will be some floodplain issues. There well may be the need to build up a pad of some height to put these buildings on. And so if we're talking about 35 feet above grade, I wanted you to try to be as specific as possible in that regard. So that if there's a 10-foot berm on top of which we're building a 35-foot building, I don't think that's what the neighbors contemplate. I don't think that's what the council contemplated. I simply ask you to be specific in that. Your city attorney made reference to existing code and believes that that might be adequate. I'm not fully certain of that, but he's more expert than I about your own code in matters of building height. As to the North Fair Oaks, I think that is fairly well explained also in terms of the language that was in the original material. It simply said shall not be required. That, of course, is something very different than shall not be allowed. And so, again, your own attorney has more directly addressed that in his memo. And in my memo, I suggest specific language that could be incorporated at multiple places in your order to make sure that the sentiment, the expressions that were used by the board, and I think the sense of the motion, if not the exact wording of the motion, is more clearly indicated in the decision. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to make this request. We do not deem that a public hearing is necessary on this matter, just as your own attorney said that you have the ability to secretarially, without going back to the public to get comment upon it, clarify your own meaning as to what you wish. This is not something that I would like to take to a court of law. I'm not sure the court would rewrite one word of what you expressed in your decisions in this regard. So it is very, very important that we get the council's best and closest attention to this matter. Because again, this will be back and forth with the neighbors and the developer and that design review consultant that we fear may be behind the curtain. And whose decisions we can only appeal to you when we come, if we have to come next time. Please be as specific as you intended to be, as we need you to be in this decision at this time. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Leroy. Mr. Wadums?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So let me just put a couple things on the record real quick. You can see that the applicant, Will Gustafson, is currently on Zoom. You can see that his planner, Bob Taunton, is also on Zoom. They're missing their attorney. So let's go through this. Like I said, on page 68 of the packet, if the council thinks that they would like to add some things, let me just say, if statements were made during oral pronouncement that are not in the written decision, I think it's fair game to call those clerical or scrivener issues. And so if we're just talking about clerical or scrivener errors that are intended to clarify what was said in the oral pronouncement, I think that's fair game. And I think that could happen tonight, especially based on what Mr. Leroy just said on behalf of Bear Acres. Now, if the council wants to go beyond that, obviously, Mr. Gustafson has a due process right to have an attorney and to go through that process. I have information. I previously, well, let me say it like this. Last week, I talked to their attorney, Will Gustafson's attorney, and she had no objections to Exhibit A. So I think if the council likes what I have called Exhibit A to my memo that's on page 70 of the packet, then I think the parties would be in general agreement that we could do that tonight. Beyond that, though, I think Mr. Gustafson would have a due process right to have an attorney and be present and be part of that process. But for tonight's purposes, if we're just talking about clerical or scrivener issues, what I would recommend is that the council, there are two motions, and I talk about those two motions on page 68. The first motion would be that somebody on the council make a motion to reconsider the merits of the decision. In other words, that'd be a motion to hear the request for reconsideration. If that motion passed after a second, then the second motion would be, okay, when are we going to reconsider that? And so are we going to reconsider that tonight? Or are we going to reconsider that at a different time? And so that's why there's two motions. So if you look on page 68 of the packet, that's my legal memorandum. And that talks about and it says, if the city council decides to reconsider the written decision, two motions should be made. And I put those motions in there. It's sub 1 or paren 1 and then paren 2. But so if we're talking about clerical or scrivener issues, what I think is fair game is what I've put in Exhibit A. I have redlined some statements that I think clarify what the council's decision is. So that's in red and that's underlined. I would think that could clarify the council's written decision. And so you could go through that, and that's Exhibit A. That's on page 70 through page approximately 80 of the packet. If the council is so inclined to do that. Beyond that, though, again, Mr. Gustafson, the applicant, would have a due process right to be heard. So I think it just kind of depends on what the council wants to do tonight, and then we can kind of take it from there. I think that's about it. So I think the council has some discretion. And if the council does want to clear up make some clarifying statements, I think that could be accomplished tonight via motion. And with that, I stand for any questions.
Questions of Mr. Wadums?
Mr. Mayor, I want to ask Mr. Wadums something. So the phrase reconsider the merits of the decision. In this case, we're just talking about language that incorporates the inaccurately and reflects the intentions of city council.
Yes, so that is correct, Mayor, Council Member Heller. If that's all the council wants to do, then the motion should be to reconsider the scrivener issues or the clerical issues, or just reconsider the clarifications rather than the merits. I think that would probably be more along the lines.
Thank you so
of the motion. And also, if the council wants to go that direction, if I may, I think it would be just an amended findings of fact, conclusions, law and decision. I think that's what we would call it. It wouldn't be a new decision. It would just be an amended decision to clean it up.
Okay, further questions?
Mr. Williams, would that then be if we agree with Exhibit A, which I think covered what Mr. Leroy mentioned, is that a third motion then that we would do?
No, I think, Mayor, Councilmember Jacobs, I think it'd still be the same two motions. You might have to wordsmith it a little bit depending on the intent of the council, but I think it's still the two motions.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, so the first order of business would be whether or not the council is going to reconsider the language in the written decision for clarification. Council member Heller, do you want to make that motion?
I will. Should that motion include the adoption of Exhibit A? Mr. Wadums?
Mayor and Councilmember Jacobs, it certainly, or Heller, excuse me, it certainly could.
All right, then I move that the city council reconsider the language in the decision and incorporate Exhibit A, the language in Exhibit A to incorporate the intentions of city council in the decision.
Second.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
just for clarification and verification, I would like to ask Mr. Taunton, Mr. Gustafson, first of all, extend my sincere condolences to the loss of your team, but just verify that you've had an opportunity to also read Mr. Wadham's memo and confirm that, in fact, you believe that this memo and the addendum would, in fact, not be detrimental and achieve what we believe was the corrected language.
Mr. Gustafson?
Mayor Evans, thank you for allowing me to join through this audio, and thank you for the condolences for those in the audience and online who did not hear. We unfortunately lost a very dear friend of ours, Joanne Butler, tragically drowned in Kona, Hawaii on Friday. Excuse me. We're at a loss for words. But yes, that's our understanding. I think there's been a spirit of cooperation, and I thank Mr. Leroy. I think if there's just, as Charlie said, some minor clarifications with regards to that height, which we agreed to the current zoning requirement of 35 feet. We are all in agreement with that, and also we are also in agreement with that there will be no pedestrian or vehicle access to and from Fair Oaks.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Gustafson. Anything further, council, in discussion? They've got a motion on the floor. Clerk, call the roll.
Councilmember Heller,
Yes.
Councilmember Jacobs,
Yes.
Councilmember Jorgensen,
Yes.
Councilmember Page.
Yes.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, so I heard a motion to adopt Exhibit 1 or Exhibit A, excuse me, but I think if there'd be a second motion, just to clarify, does the council want to do that tonight or at a future date? And I think maybe we already did it, but we want to make sure that Mr. Totten has ample opportunity to respond. Sounds like he did just respond, but I don't know if he has any additional thoughts on whether he'd like that to happen now or at a future date. So.
Mr. Gustafson, are you prepared for a council action tonight on this?
We are, and I believe I speak for Bob, unless he were to say something otherwise.
Mr. Mayor, Council, this is Bob Taunton. Yes, we're in agreement with moving forward tonight, and we support the changes that Charlie has proposed to the wording of the decision document.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Taunton. Okay, council. So we're looking for a motion to amend the decision document to include Exhibit A as an action the council takes tonight. So Charlie, do you just amend the decision and I re-sign it? Okay.
Correct. If that's the guidance from mayor and council, then staff will come up with an amended decision document that is specific and identical, other than being in red and underlined to Exhibit A.
Okay, Is someone prepared to make a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move that the council in light of the agreement on Exhibit A, approve the decision document as it will be amended at a future time to incorporate the language of Exhibit A.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
President of the council, at a future time or effective today.
Well, that's tough. It sounds like the actual decision document won't be prepared today. Is that correct?
I could, well, you could trust me and just adopt Exhibit A as the amended decision, or if you want to take another look at it, we could do it in 2 weeks. It's up to you. But if the direction and the motion is just to adopt Exhibit A as the amended decision, I think we could.
Well, I think the spirit of this is to move along as quickly as possible.
That's what I see.
So unless there's objections from the council, let's do that today.
Let's do that.
Okay, so the motion's been clarified that the action is effective. The staff's ordered to amend the decision document, and it will be effective upon my signature,
Very good.
Okay, good.
Which will be on today's date.
which will be today's date.
And then if there's some problem, Mr. Leroy will have 14 days to submit another request for reconsideration.
Okay, everybody clear with the motion? Any further discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Councilmember Jacobs?
Yes.
Councilmember Jorgensen?
Yes.
Councilmember Page?
Yes.
Councilmember Heller?
Yes.
Thank you. Is everyone staying for the budget discussion or are you all? leaving? I'll give you a chance to. We're only spending 20 million bucks, if that's all right. 27 million.
Thank you.
Yeah, had a little boy.
Of course. Thanks for coming out.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Yeah, take care.
Thanks for coming.
I appreciate your civility.
I wish you could get what's expanding my knowledge of your staff.
Yes.
I thought that was.
I did. She's quite a firecracker.
I had my living space, so I thought it was someone- I thought it was a guy.
Thank you for the covert.
Oh.
Like,
Was that too snarky?
no,
Okay.
it's
all
my
right.
first thought.
Okay, we'll move now to item G1. This would be to approve the tentative budget for our fiscal year 2024 in the amount of $27,736,419. Council, the action, if you approve the tentative budget, this would move along to a public hearing on what date?
Monday, August 28th, 2 weeks from today.
2 weeks from today on August 28th, at which time we would have a public hearing. At that public hearing, you'll have the option to amend the budget if you want to. You cannot exceed the number that's approved tonight, however. So you can, on the 28th, you can adopt it as you adopt tonight, or you could reduce it if you so chose. So, so the matter before the council, I think you've all had an opportunity to review the documents. If there's further discussion, now's the time. Otherwise, I'd entertain an action.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
if I could just poll the council.
sure.
Councilmember Jacobs, did you have any comments about the budget as proposed, or did you have adequate time to review that?
I did. The only clarifying question I have is whether some of the things we were doing in terms of compensation were in the budget, and I was assured it was. So my questions were answered.
Fantastic. Councilmember Jorgensen,
I have no questions.
please.
I have no questions.
Oh, no questions. I thought you said.
You put us in shock there.
No question.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Heller.
I have no questions, Council President.
With that, I move to approve fiscal year 2024 tentative budget in the total amount for all funds of $27,736,419.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, clerk call the roll.
Councilmember Jorgensen,
Yes.
Councilmember Page,
Yes.
Councilmember Heller,
Yes.
Councilmember Jacobs.
Yes.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda would be to go into executive session, after which we will adjourn.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move to that, council moves to executive session for the purpose of, discussion on potential chief of police. And, after which, the regular council meeting will be adjourned.
I'd second.
Got a motion and a second. Can I presume that's according to Idaho Code 74206A?
Way to be ready with that number. Yes, Your Honor.
I didn't memorize it. I had Lisa write me a cheat sheet. So we all have them.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, we do want to.
Okay, any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, clerk call roll.
Councilmember Page,
Yes.
Councilmember Heller.
Yes.
Councilmember Jacobs.
Yes.
Councilmember Jorgensen.
Yes.
Thank you. At this time, we'll say goodnight to those of you that have joined us online. And for the purposes of this executive session, only staff present will be Mr. Waddle.